Hey buddies, this is NavWebDev. Hope you all are doing well. So, till now we have implemented forms with the help of class and function components. Let's take this a bit further. We are going to implement form validation in ReactJS. Why do we need it? Because it will ensure that the data entered by the user is correct, complete, and in the right format. It will help prevent submission errors and ensure the system can process the information properly. Let's get started. Let's create a component with name form validation.js. And we require the function component. And now we need the form that is to be included inside the return statement within these div tags. So I would like to have a heading, let's say simple form validation. And we are going to include a form tag. We need two text boxes. We require input type equals to text. We require name attribute equals to name. And also a second one, input type equals to email, name as email. Here we are trying to create a very simple form so that we can understand the way we can implement this validation, what logic is to be performed, and we are doing it inside a function component. Although you can also use a class component, but the preferred way is a function component. Also, we will include a break tag so that the text boxes come one below the other. And also a button. So I'll include button type equals to submit. And the text will be submit. Now we require the destructuring assignment for our state variables or state objects, you can say. So first of all, I will use formData and set formData. So formData is what? It's an object that stores the current values of the form fields. So initially both the name and email need to be empty strings. So I'm considering them as, it's an object, but we have properties. Name should be an empty string. Email is also an empty string. Then second one is, we need a state variable for errors and set errors function. So initially the errors are set to a totally empty object. So now we got two state variables along with their corresponding functions as set formData, which will update the formData state, and set errors will update the error state. Now we need a function which will be triggered whenever there is a change in the input field. I'm creating handleChange, which is an arrow function, and I'm passing event E as the argument. Use name and value So we are using here the object destructuring assignment e.target. So e.target represents the input element that triggered the event. The name property represents the field's name, like name or email, and value represents the input value. Next, we need the form data. We need to set the form data. This will update the form data state with the new value for the specific field that changed. We need the spread operator, form data, comma name, which should be set to value. So the spread operator, form data, this ensures that the rest of the form data object remains unchanged, while only the field currently being edited is updated. Now use this function handleChange inside your input fields using onChange equals to handleChange. onChange equals to handleChange. Now we also need the logic for the form submission. So I'm going to create a function handleSubmit, which is an arrow function. I'm passing event as the parameter. And I want to prevent the default functionality, that is, I don't want my form to get submitted. So I'm using e.prevent default. Here I'm creating an empty object called new errors. So this will store the errors. Right now it is an empty object. Now next is I'm going to check the conditions, that if this name is empty. So for this I'll have to use formData.name. So it means that if formData.name, if it's empty, then we need to add the error string to this new errors object. Means we have to add this error string to the property name of the new errors object. So I'll specify here name is required. Right, so another one is that if formData dot email, if this is empty, then new errors dot email equals email is required. Now after checking if the form fields are empty and assigning them their corresponding error strings, now we need to check that if really these errors exist. For this we need to write a logic where I'm going to use object.keys. So I have to check the length of this object, that is new errors dot length, if it's greater than 0. Then we will set the errors. We will use the set errors function, and the state will change to new errors object. So if that's the case, it will set the errors, or else we have to alert the user that form submitted successfully. While the set errors function that time will stand as an empty object. If there are errors, it will update the error state with the validation error messages. If no errors are found, then alert is shown and the set errors clears any previous errors. Now we can utilize this handleSubmit function when the form is getting submitted. So we will use the onSubmit event and call this handleSubmit function inside the form tag. We also need to display the errors right below these text boxes. For this, I'm using JSX and I'll use the variable. We use this variable, that is the initial state, as errors. So let's use this. If errors.name, if this error exists, I'm using a ternary operator here. If this exists, this should be assigned a red color. So I'll use a paragraph tag where I'll use the style object and pass the color as red. And we will display here in the JSX errors.name. Now if errors, it's error here, it's actually errors.name. So if this errors.name does not exist, in that case, the style applied should be null. Same way, I'll use this JSX for the second text box, that is email. I'll change this one to email and this one also to email. We are ready with this. Let's now render our component. It's form validation. Let's check the output. So when I click on the submit button, we are getting these two errors. The moment I write something, let's say I write my name, and I submit, you see that the error for the name field has vanished. Same way it will be for the email. So when I submit, you get form submitted successfully. So in this video, we learned how to implement the form validation using the simple state management with useState. So this ensures a very smooth and interactive user experience. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.